There it was, my grandfather's Qing Dynasty pottery, worth $4 million. 5 sitting on a rain-soaked sidewalk, next to a broken lawnmower and trash bags. I stood there at 6:30 Wednesday morning in my brother's driveway, still wearing yesterday's clothes from the emergency call, watching water pool around ceramics that had survived 200 years, but might not survive my sister-in-law's spring cleaning. Eugene stood beside me, his hands shaking. "She threw it all away," he whispered. 5. Everything Walter spent 40 years collecting. My brother didn't know. That much was clear from the way his truck was already gone, off to his engineering job while his wife dismantled our family's history piece by piece. She'd even ordered a rental truck for Saturday morning. 2 days to haul away what she thought was junk. 5s. What she didn't know was that I'd been trained since I was 9 years old to see what things actually were, not what they looked like. Point 5. And I'd just started seeing. But let me start from the beginning, from the phone call that brought me here. Thank you for being here. Tss. Before we start, leave a comment and tell me, have you ever had to stand up for something that truly mattered to you? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs today. Quick note, some details are fictionalized to highlight the lesson. The heart of this story is what I hope stays with you. I woke to my phone ringing at 6:47 a.m. Still, disoriented in the small guest room of my brother's house in Amarillo. The same room I'd been sleeping in for 3 months since the school. 5 district laid me off. Eugene Pennington's name lit up the screen. The 68-year-old retired curator who lived 2 houses down had been my grandfather's Saturday coffee companion for 15 years. He was the only person besides grandfather who knew what was really in that storage shed. "Leora, come outside. 5 right now." His voice had that tight quality that made my stomach drop. "What's wrong?" "Just come." 5 front sidewalk. I pulled on my jacket over pajamas and moved through the dark hallway. Zeef. November in the Texas Panhandle meant cold mornings and gray skies that looked like they'd forgotten how to stop raining. I stepped onto the front porch and stopped. The pile stretched across the sidewalk and into the street. Cardboard boxes sagging under rain. 5 their sides collapsing inward. Newspaper wrapping dark with water. Wooden crates tilted at angles that made my chest tighten. 5. Everything from the storage shed behind the house. 40 years of my grandfather's collection. Dumped like trash, waiting for morning pickup. Eugene stood across the street under a black umbrella, his face grim in the streetlight. "I came out for my paper," he said. 5. Found this 20 minutes ago. I walked down the steps barefoot. The concrete was cold and slick. Rain had soaked through most of the boxes already. "How much is out here?" "All of it. Everything from the shed." I knelt beside the nearest crate. Water seeped through my pajama knees. The smell of wet cardboard mixed with something older. Dust, wood. 5 paper that had been dry for decades until tonight. I peeled back a layer of soaked newspaper from a small frame. The canvas underneath was damp but intact. I studied the brushwork in the dim light. Soft edges. 5 precise color gradation in the corner, where most painters would have been careless. No signature. I didn't need one. 8 years of Saturday mornings with my grandfather, age 9 to 17, learning to see what things were instead of what they were called. This was Georgia O'Keeffe. Early work, before she started signing pieces. Before anyone knew her name. My hands recognized the technique the way some people recognize handwriting. Does Colleen have any idea what she's just thrown away? Shoe 5. My sister-in-law had hired someone to appraise the collection. I knew that much. Some local gallery that specialized in estate sales. They would have walked through the shed, glanced at boxes, made notes on a clipboard. They wouldn't have brought a UV lamp. Wouldn't have known to check the glaze on the pottery or study the canvas weave on the paintings. They saw junk. Because that's what people see when they don't know how to look. "Oh, Colleen," I whispered. "What have you done?" I stood slowly, rewrapping the painting in its wet newspaper with careful hands. Across the street, Jean 5. Eugene watched me with the expression of someone who understood exactly what I'd just recognized. I pulled my phone from my jacket pocket and called him back, even though he was standing 15 feet away. "Eugene, can you come over?" "I'm already here. Bring your camera." Eugene and I spent the next hour photographing every piece on that sidewalk. 5. Documenting the water damage, cataloging what we could see through soaked newspaper. By the time we finished, my hands were numb and my pajamas were ruined. Colleen, my sister-in-law at 41, Jess. was already dressed for work when I came into the kitchen 90 minutes later. She stood at the counter with her coffee like this was any other Wednesday morning. She ran her household the way she ran marketing campaigns at the commercial real estate firm. Efficiently, decisively, 5 and without room for sentimentality. I had them professionally assessed, she said before I could speak. Show 5, I'm not irresponsible. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Eugene had positioned himself just outside the back door, visible through the window. Waiting. Which gallery? Sandstone Gallery on Polk Street. They specialize in estate sales. Colleen poured herself more coffee. Do 5 her movements precise. They confirmed what I suspected. Decorative items from the 1960s and 70s. No significant commercial value. Your grandfather had good taste. But taste doesn't make something worth keeping when it takes up an entire shed. She believed every word she was saying. That was what made it worse. Did they use a UV lamp? Colleen paused, the coffee pot still tilted over her mug. 5. I don't know what that is. It's how you authenticate old ceramics and paintings, I said. Standard procedure. The glaze on pottery fluoresces differently depending on age and composition. U5, UV light shows what the naked eye can't. They didn't mention that. No, I said. They wouldn't have. Something shifted in her expression. Not doubt, exactly. Just a small crack in the certainty. My eyes caught on a piece of paper half buried under a stack of mail and magazines on the table. I recognized the logo before I could read the text. I reached over and pulled it free. Truck rental receipt, Amarillo U-Haul. Scheduled for Saturday morning, 8 a.m. 5. When did you schedule this? Last week, Colleen said. Does it matter? The items need to go regardless. I read the date at the top of the invoice. Then I read it again, November 12th. 4 days before grandfather died. My grandfather had passed away on November 16th. I remembered the date because it was a Tuesday and I'd been in the middle of teaching a class I no longer taught when my brother called. 5. Colleen had rented this truck while grandfather was still alive. While he was still breathing. While he could still object. I folded the invoice slowly, precisely, and slid it into my jacket pocket. The items, I said, looking directly at her. I need them back. Today, Dwight and I already decided. Today. The words sat between us. Colleen set her coffee mug down with more force than necessary. This is our house. We're trying to make space for our family. You're here temporarily, and, today, I repeated. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't explain. Didn't justify. Just that one word, firm and final. Colleen stared at me like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize. Good. She should. Outside the window, Eugene met my eyes and gave a single nod. The photos were uploaded, backed up, time-stamped. Whatever happened next. We had evidence of what had been thrown away, and when Colleen left for work 20 minutes after our conversation, her coffee mug rinsed and placed in the dishwasher with the same precision she'd used to schedule that truck rental. By noon, I had moved half the pile back to the storage shed behind the house. 5, wrapping each piece in dry newspaper Eugene had brought from his garage. The shed smelled like it always had. Wood and dust and 40 years of silence. I unwrapped a bowl that had survived the rain. The glaze showed crazing, fine cracks across the surface, but the structure was sound. I turned it in my hands, heavier than it looked. Real weight. The memory hit sharp and sudden. I was 9 years old, standing in this same shed on a Saturday morning in summer.
Bafa.
My grandfather, Walter Ashford, had died 6 months earlier at 84, leaving behind what my sister-in-law called 40 years of accumulated junk. And what I knew from 8 years of Saturday mornings was actually a carefully curated collection. But that first Saturday, I didn't know anything. Don't look, grandfather had said, placing pottery in my hands. Just feel how heavy it is. Why is it heavier than grandma's dishes? Because it's older. And real. Every Saturday morning for 8 years. Age 9, learning weight and texture. Age 12, studying glaze patterns under a magnifying glass. Age 15, identifying period styles from reference books he kept locked away. Age 17, understanding provenance and why documentation mattered as much as the objects themselves. No one else came to the shed on those mornings. My brother Dwight thought we were just spending time together. Grandmother would bring coffee and leave us alone. They were spending time together. But grandfather was building something Nosen could see. A fortress made of knowledge that couldn't be taken away, or appraised by people who didn't know to bring a UV lamp. Books teach you names, he'd told me at 12. 5. Touch teaches you truth. At 15, someone in this family should know what things are worth. At 17, not the money. The meaning. I set the bowl aside and picked up the small canvas I'd unwrapped on the sidewalk that morning. The newspaper had protected it. I studied the brushwork where a signature would normally be. Nothing. No name. I didn't need one. Soft edges where most painters would have been sharp. Color layering in a specific technique. Bone white built up in translucent glazes. The kind of work someone did before they were famous, before they knew their name would matter. Georgia O'Keeffe. Early period. Probably 1915 or 1916. Before she started signing. You knew, I whispered. 5. You knew exactly what you had. And he'd made sure one person would recognize it. One person would understand what it meant when someone like Colleen decided 40 years of careful collecting was junk taking up space that could be converted into a playroom. The painting in my hands was worth roughly $8 million. It had hung in this shed corner for 15 years. Unremarkable to everyone who walked past it. Everyone except the man who taught me to see what others couldn't. I set the painting aside and pulled out my phone. Sent my brother a single text. Come home now. Emergency. My brother Dwight's truck pulled into the driveway at 2:30, 5 hours earlier than usual. He was 42 and always in work. Putting in 12-hour days at the engineering firm since the new pipeline project started. He'd been home for exactly 3 dinners in the past 2 weeks. I was waiting in the hallway with the invoice in my hand. He came through the side door still wearing his high-vis vest, dust on his jeans. I got your text. What's the emergency? I held up the invoice without speaking. He took it, squinting at the paper. What truck? That was when I knew. Dwight had no idea his wife had rented a truck to haul away our grandfather's collection. This is a truck rental. For Saturday morning. Who ordered this? Colleen appeared in the kitchen doorway. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater. Calm. I did, she said. Last week. You were busy with the pipeline project. I handled it. Dwight turned to look at her. 5. You could have asked me first. You've been working 16-hour days. I was managing the house. He looked back at the invoice, then at me. 5. We can cancel it. If you want the stuff back in the shed, we'll cancel it. I pointed to the date at the top. This date, November 12th. Grandfather died on the 16th. Dwight stared at the numbers. Colleen's voice didn't waver. The timeline doesn't change what needed to be done. The shed was full of outdated items taking up space. Whether I scheduled removal before or after doesn't matter. We can cancel the truck, Dwight said again. It's not a big deal. My brother still didn't understand. 4 days before death wasn't bad timing. It was evidence. I folded the invoice and slid it back into my jacket pocket. Said nothing about what it proved. D5. I need to make a phone call. I went to the guest room and closed the door. Proof 5. Opened my laptop and pulled up the email I'd been composing in my head since I unwrapped that O'Keeffe. To authentication at Sotheby's.com subject. Urgent assessment request. Possible, Qing's Dynasty Imperial Ware, plus Early American Modernist work collection. Includes approximately 11 significant pieces. Urgent assessment needed. Can provide detailed photographs within 24 hours. 5. I attached 3 of Eugene's photos. The pottery and the painting. Collection may include unsigned Georgia O'Keeffe early period work. 5. Preliminary evaluation requested. I hit send at 2:47 p.m. While Dwight and Colleen discussed whether to cancel a truck rental, I'd already escalated this to international experts who would know exactly what they were looking at. Your move, Colleen, I whispered. Jersh. The truck was scheduled for Saturday at 8 a.m. That gave me roughly 65 hours to get Sotheby's to authenticate what my sister-in-law had thrown away. Or watch $26 million disappear into a landfill. The email arrived at 6:52 Thursday morning, 4 hours after I'd sent it. 4 hours. To reply to a stranger inquiring about $8 million worth of art, potentially sitting on a panhandle sidewalk. Preston Redmond, 51. Senior Specialist in Asian Ceramics and American Modernist Art at Sotheby's Seattle office. Had either been working through the night or my email landed in front of exactly the right person. Mems Ashford, the message began. S5. Your inquiry regarding the O'Keeffe panel and associated collection warrants immediate attention. Based on your description and the provenance details you've provided, I can be in Amarillo tomorrow morning. Would 10 a.m. 5 suit your schedule? I read it 3 times, my coffee going cold on the kitchen counter. The speed wasn't just professional courtesy. 5. This was the response you got when someone recognized documentation they'd seen before, when a collection's reputation preceded it. Grandfather had kept records. Expert-level records. I was 26 when I spent 3 months at Christie's London office, learning how to spot anachronistic pigments under UV light and identify maker's marks on Ming Dynasty ceramics. My family thought I was backpacking through Europe between graduate school applications. Grandfather had paid for the entire internship, $15,000 he'd funneled through Eugene's nonprofit foundation to avoid questions. You'll need this someday. He'd told me the night before I left, his hand steady as he wrote the check. Trust me, I'd trusted him. I just never understood what someday meant. My phone buzzed. Eugene, you got the Sotheby's reply, he asked. 5. How did you know about that? Because Preston copied me. I'm listed as a reference in your grandfather's files. He paused. 5. I was also copied on the wire transfer receipt for your Christie's internship 11 years ago. Walter swore me to secrecy. Said you'd need the training when the time came, but if your parents knew, they'd interfere. The coffee mug felt slippery in my hand. 5. He planned this. The whole thing. He planned for someone to try exactly what Colleen's trying, Eugene said quietly. 5. He just made sure you'd be able to prove it. I scheduled the Friday viewing for 10 a.m., then did the math. 30 hours until Preston arrived. After that, maybe 6 hours for authentication and photography. That left 22 hours before the rental truck deadline at 8 a.m. Saturday. 5. 22 hours to document everything, get preliminary valuations, and file an emergency injunction if Colleen tried to move the pieces. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd started the night before. 43 items cataloged so far. The O'Keefe panel, the jade burial suit, the Tiffany Nautilus shell, the ebony box I hadn't opened yet, the one with grandfather's handwriting on the tag, for Leora. She'll know when. I was starting to think I knew exactly when. The ebony box sat on the workbench Thursday afternoon. Rain damp but structurally intact, exactly as grandfather had built it to be. I ran my fingers along the hinges, then the dovetail joints. 5 Ming Dynasty style, flawless craftsmanship. But the weight was wrong. Interior should be shallower based on exterior dimensions. I'd noticed it at 14, the first time he let me hold it. Why is this box heavier than it looks? I'd asked that Saturday in the shed. 5. Because what matters is always underneath. I measured the depth, exterior, 4 3/4 inches, interior, 4 inches. 5 3/4 of an inch missing. Not a flaw. A feature. The red velvet lining was smooth under my fingertips. 5. I pressed my thumb into the left corner where the lining met the base, angled at 45 degrees, then slid it forward. Exactly the way he'd shown me 23 years ago. The entire bottom shifted with a quiet click. The lining lifted cleanly. 5. Revealing a sealed compartment. I'd known this space existed since 14. He'd taught me how to open it. Made me practice until I could do it blindfolded. But he'd never shown me what was inside. I removed the false bottom and set it aside. 5 White envelope, legal-sized. Notary seal embossed on the front. The label read, Last Will and Testament Walter Ashford, with a date from 8 months ago, March 2025. Before I show you what was inside that envelope, are you still with me? Comment A, if you think it holds legal proof. For B, if it's something else. Add one short reason. Please note, what follows includes recreated details for narrative purposes. The message is what I hope stays with you. I opened it carefully, sliding my finger under the flap, 3 pages, cotton stock, notarized. 2 witness signatures, Eugene Pennington and Margaret Howe, probably his attorney, page 2. 5 Paragraph 3. I hereby bequeath my entire collection of antiques, pottery, ceramics. 5 An artwork, currently stored in the shed located at 4712 Sagebrush Court, Amarillo, Texas, to my granddaughter Leora Ashford, free of encumbrance and with full title transfer effective upon my death. Not Dwight, not the family, me. Every piece Colleen threw away Wednesday morning had already belonged to me for 8 months. The collection transferred to my name November 16th, the moment he died, before the funeral. Before she suggested cleaning the shed. Before that truck was scheduled. She'd thrown away property that was never legally hers. I set the will down and looked back into the compartment. 5 Small USB drive, matte black. The label stopped my breath. Grandfather's handwriting in block letters. 5 Laura, watch before doing anything. Not if you find this. not in case of emergency. Before. Like he'd known I'd find it at exactly the right moment, I turned the drive over. Standard capacity, probably video or documents. 14 hours, until Preston arrived Friday morning. But first, I needed to watch whatever grandfather had recorded before anyone else knew I'd found it. I carried my laptop into the shed Thursday afternoon and closed the door. The USB drive clicked into the port. Single file. Video 05182.025.mp4. My grandfather's face filled the screen. Alive, steady-eyed, the storage shed visible behind him. The date stamp in the corner stopped my breath. May 18, 2025, 9:47 a.m., 6 months before he died. His voice was clear, strong. He sat in the shed chair, hands folded, looking into the lens. My name is Walter Ashford. Today is May 18, 2025. I am 84 years old and of sound mind. He paused. I am recording this to document the collection I am leaving to my granddaughter, Leora Ashford, and to explain why. Not a deathbed confession. A planned legal testimony. He lifted a handwritten list into frame, his careful block lettering visible. Item 1. Qing Dynasty Bowl. Qianlong period, imperial wear. Estimated value $4.2 million. He read slowly, methodically. Item 2. Ming Dynasty Jade Burial Suit Partial Assembly. Estimated value $3.8 million. The numbers accumulated. Pottery, paintings, ceramics. Each piece named provenance noted. Item 7. Unsigned canvas Early Georgia O'Keeffe circa 1916. Untainted by Eugene Pennington, retired curator. Estimated value $8.2 million. $8.2 million. I'd rescued it from the sidewalk Wednesday morning. He continued through 11 items, then set the list down. 5. Total conservative estimate for this collection. Not less than $25 million. I paused the video, handshaking. We're $25 million. Colleen had thrown $25 million. I resumed playback. Grandfather leaned closer, his expression shifting from formal to direct. I leave these pieces to you, Leora, because you are the only one who listens. Not learned, listened. You learned to see what things are, not what they are called. His eyes stayed locked on the lens, on me, across 6 months and death. 5. I acquired these over 40 years, each piece authenticated by Eugene Pennington. The documentation is in a separate file, along with my will. He turned slightly, looking toward the shed door, toward some future moment he could already see. 5. Whoever throws these away has thrown away their own future. He knew 6 months before Colleen threw anything away. Grandfather knew someone would try. That was why he made this video, why he documented everything. I wiped my eyes and kept watching. The camera angle shifted slightly. Just a few degrees. In that shift, a shadow appeared on the shed wall behind grandfather, human-shaped. Standing to the left of the camera. Someone else had been in the room. Grandfather nodded toward the shadow. Vive. Eugene Pennington has witnessed this recording and verified each item's authentication. This testimony is given freely and without coercion. Eugene had filmed this. Eugene had been there. I paused the video and grabbed my phone. He answered on the first ring. You were there, I said. You filmed this. He asked me to witness it, Eugene said quietly. 5. Legally and personally. Why didn't you tell me sooner? The silence on the line lasted 3 heartbeats. Because, Eugene said finally. 5. He made me promise to wait until you found it yourself. He wanted you to discover it the way he planned. When you needed it. Not before. I understood. Grandfather had choreographed everything, even the timing. Preston Redmond's silver rental sedan pulled into the driveway at exactly 10 o'clock Friday morning, and through the kitchen window, I watched Colleen's head turn sharply toward the unfamiliar car. I met him at the shed. Eugene was already there. Preston stepped out carrying an aluminum case and leather portfolio. 51, tall, wire-rimmed glasses, methodical movements. He shook my hand once, then Eugene's. Your neighbor sent the video testimony last night, he said, setting the case down. 5. That changes the assessment parameters. You drove through the night? I asked. 5. The pieces in those photos warranted immediate attention. He unpacked his equipment on the workbench. UV lamp, digital microscope, glaze analysis tools, reference binders with auction records and provenance documentation. All business, no small talk. He lifted the Qing Dynasty bowl first, holding it under natural light, then switched on the UV lamp. The glaze fluoresced pale blue-green, the specific wavelength signature of Qianlong Imperial Workshop materials. Zu 5, glaze pattern consistent with Qianlong Imperial Workshop. he murmured, more to himself than us. He set it under the digital microscope, examining the kiln marks on the base. Photographed them, compared them to reference images in his binder, made notes in tight, precise handwriting. Then he moved to the O'Keefe canvas, analyzed the paint composition under magnification, studied the canvas weave, checked age indicators in the wood frame. Each test confirmed rather than questioned. Eugene stood beside me, arms folded. I authenticated provenance documentation in 2019. Preston nodded without looking up. Your documentation is solid. This confirms it. He worked silently for 20 minutes, moving from piece to piece. The jade burial suit, the Tiffany Nautilus shell, the pottery fragments that looked like broken dishes but weren't. Finally, he set the bowl down carefully on its velvet cushion and looked at both of us. Based on current market comparables and authentication, conservative estimate is $26 to $28 million. The number hung in the Texas morning air. I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Colleen standing in the shed doorway, 10 feet behind us. I didn't turn $26 million. The woman, who ordered it thrown away, stands 10 feet behind us. The O'Keefe alone is 8 to 9 million, Preston continued. 5 making another note. I kept my eyes on the bowl, remembering grandfather's hands holding it, teaching me to feel its weight. Colleen said nothing. No argument, no question, no defense, just footsteps, slow, deliberate, receding toward the house. The kitchen door closed. The silence was more powerful than any confession. Preston lifted the bowl again, studying it in natural light. I'd like to discuss consignment timeline and insurance during transport. She heard every word, I said quietly. Eugene nodded. She did. My brother came through the side door at 8 o'clock Friday evening, 12 hours before the truck was supposed to arrive, D5, and found me sitting at the kitchen table with the invoice placed exactly where he'd see it. I'd positioned it there after Preston left. Not hidden, not explained, just there. Dwight set his work bag down and saw the paper immediately. He recognized it. The rental confirmation Colleen had shown him. He picked it up without speaking. I watched him read, not with triumph, with quiet purpose. This is the truck rental receipt, he said. Yes, why is it on the table? Look at the date. He read it once. Then again, November 12th. I waited. He sat down slowly, still holding the invoice. Dad died on the 16th. I know. His face changed. 5 not anger, something heavier. Understanding settling in like weight. His wife had planned to dispose of grandfather's collection, while grandfather was still alive. 4 days before he died. She did this when he was alive? Dwight asked quietly. I know you didn't know. He set the invoice down carefully. Aligned it with the table edge. His hands were steady but his jaw was tight. Where is she? Bedroom. She's been there since this morning. He nodded once. Didn't get up. Didn't go to confront her. Instead, he pulled out his phone and dialed. Yes. I need to cancel a truck rental for tomorrow morning, he said when someone answered. His voice was quiet, efficient. 5, confirmation number. He read it from the invoice. 8 a.m. pickup. Yes, I understand there's a cancellation fee, that's fine. He hung up. No yelling, no confrontation. Just a man calling a rental company and quietly dismantling his wife's plan. The collection, he said. 5, what happens now? Sotheby's will handle consignment. The will was notarized 8 months ago. 2 to 3 months for the process. You'll need a lawyer. Margaret Howe. She witnessed the will. Dwight rubbed his eyes. He looked exhausted. Where will you go? I'm staying in the shed, I said, at 10:30. I carried a blanket and pillow through the dark yard and closed the shed door behind me. I hadn't slept here since I was 17. When grandfather and I cataloged pottery shipments until midnight, I sat in his chair, the same one he'd used every Saturday morning for 8 years, teaching me to see what things were instead of what they were called. The collection sat on shelves around me. The Qing Dynasty bowl. The O'Keefe panel. The jade burial suit. I didn't think about the money. I thought about grandfather's hands holding that bowl. 5 showing me the glaze pattern. About his voice saying, 5 feel how heavy it is. About Saturday mornings when I was 9 and the world was pottery and tea and patience. The truck's not coming.
Grandfather.
I whispered. Through the gap in the roof boards. The one he'd never fixed because he liked seeing stars while he worked. November constellations were visible.
5.
For the first time in months I could breathe. 3 months later, on the first Saturday morning in March, I sat in the storage shed with a cup of tea, and realized the space had finally stopped echoing. Most of the collection was gone. The Qing Dynasty pottery to Shanghai. The O'Keeffe canvas to New York. The jade burial suit to London. Sotheby's had handled everything, over 2.5 months, exactly as Preston said. No courtroom. Just Margaret Howe's paperwork and grandfather's video testimony. Total realized, $26.4 million. Grandfather's estimate had been exact. Colleen moved out 6 weeks ago. Dwight filed for separation 3 days later, and I kept 3 things. They sat on the shelf where $18 million in pottery had once rested. The ebony box that held the will and USB drive. Grandfather's handwritten valuation notebook, 40 years of observations in careful block letters, and the Yixing teapot, small, unglazed purple clay. 5 used every Saturday morning during our lessons, not the most valuable pieces, the most meaningful. I lifted the teapot now. Chisifitic dive, running my finger along the rim the way grandfather had taught me, feeling for smoothness. His hands had touched this same curve thousands of times. The clay was warm from morning sun through the shed window. I filled it with hot water from my thermos. 5 measured tea leaves the way he'd shown me. 1 spoon per cup, 1 for the pot. The ritual was muscle memory now. Learned at 9 and practiced for decades. While the tea steeped, I opened his notebook. March entries from 1987. His handwriting, describing a Song Dynasty vase from an estate sale in Lubbock. Not just price or provenance. His observations about glaze, firing technique, why it mattered. Every piece tells you something if you listen long enough. He'd written in the margin. I closed the notebook and poured the tea. Someone had asked me last week, Eugene's daughter, visiting from Dallas, why I didn't sell everything. Why let go of items worth millions but keep a $200 teapot? Grandfather didn't collect them to sell, I'd told her. He collected them to keep. She'd looked confused. Then why leave them to you? I'd known the answer but hadn't said it then. Now, for 5, sitting in his chair, drinking tea from the pot he'd used to teach me patience, I understood it completely. 5, because he knew I wouldn't sell them either. Not the 3 I kept. Not the memories they held. Not the Saturday mornings they represented. The money from Sotheby's sat in accounts Margaret had set up. $2 million to Eugene's foundation. $5 million for art education in Amarillo schools. The rest waited. But I didn't think about it much. What I thought about was this. The weight of clay in my hands. The smell of tea steeping. 5 morning light. Through gaps in the shed roof that grandfather never fixed because he liked seeing stars. I drank the tea slowly. Sometimes what people throw away isn't trash. It's just something they never had the patience to understand. The teapot sat warm in my palms. 5. And for the first time since grandfather died, the shed felt exactly like home. And to you listening to my story, remember this. Looking back now, I realize I could have confronted Colleen the moment I saw those pieces on the sidewalk. But sometimes the quietest revenge is the most powerful. I learned from grandfather that patience reveals truth better than anger ever could. Don't make my mistake of ever assuming someone's greed won't blind them to value. But also don't rush to fight when careful observation can win the 5 war. You might have heard grandma revenge stories before, or tales of family betrayal over inheritance. This revenge story taught me something deeper. When someone throws away your legacy. 5. The lesson isn't just about getting even, it's about knowing your worth. Whether it's a grandma revenge scenario or a grandfather's legacy like mine. These stories show us Fortis who prepares for battles we didn't see coming. I believe God gave me those 8 years with grandfather for this exact reason. He was preparing me to see value where others saw junk. To 5, to stand firm when this revenge story became my own. So, tell me, what did you think of how this played out? Would you have handled it differently? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Vive. And if you want more stories about family, legacy, and quiet justice, subscribe so you never miss one. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means everything to me. As a final reminder, some elements of this story have been fictionalized or adapted for narrative purposes. Any resemblance to specific people or events is coincidental. What matters is the message and the lesson we can all take from it.